Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Overwatch Collective Podcast. Wrapping up 2025 Season 9, Episode 20. Wow. Season 9, Episode 22 with Lee. So, Lee, U.S. Army veteran, served 5 years. We're going to talk about that. Army Infantry Airborne. And then the Western Region Veterans Program Manager at New Dawn Treatment Center, which I don't know too much about. I'm excited. You got connected to our board members, Cheryl and Donna, at a conference in Sacramento. And they're like, hey, you got to do a podcast with Lee. And here we are. So excited to have you on. Thank you for coming on. How we doing?
Yeah, honored to be here, man. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, excited to share about what New Dawn's doing in the veteran community and getting to know you guys better.
Sweet. Yeah. All about the collective resources, as we call it at the Overwatch Collective. The more
Right,
resources
right.
we have for our community, obviously the better. I'm going to mention our podcast sponsor really quick, which ties in perfectly to the veteran community. So, Brain Performance Technology is a proud sponsor of our podcast. They specifically mental health clinic that treats patients with transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS electric pulses. It gets delivered to specific areas on the scalp to alter brainwave activity, treat various conditions, including depression, TBI, PTSD, anxiety, ADHD, OCD, and addiction disorders. Drug free, non invasive, improves brainwave function, improves better sleep, better mood, and bigger gains in improved health. Brain Performance Technology offers different TMS protocols, including RTMS, MERT, and its newest treatment protocol, SAINT, Stanford Accelerated Intelligent Neuromodulation Therapy. BPT is an authorized TRICARE provider and can assist with insurance authorization for qualifying TRICARE patients. And you can learn more today at onebbt.com. Check them out. Thank you for sponsoring. All right. That was a mouthful for me, getting all the admin stuff out of the way. Lee, give us a quick intro of yourself, man, where you were from, and then leading up to joining the military.
Yeah, right on, man. I right now I'm currently in Rockland, California, so just outside of Sacramento, kind of going up to the foothills of the Sierras. And I grew up in this area, went to high school in this area. Ultimately joined the military from this area, and then came back. I'm a father, married to a woman that's way out of my league. She's an Air Force brat, but I don't hold that against her. But yeah, three kids, all varying ages, but great kids and keep me busy and keep me focused on what I'm doing.
All right, very cool. Yeah, I have a an aunt out in Rockland,
Nice. Yeah,
so
it's a good area.
yeah, it is a good area. Definitely is. When did you join the army?
I joined in 2008. So I was joined a little bit later. I was a 21-year-old man child. Um, I graduated high school pretty early. Actually, graduated high school when I was 16, and just kind of bounced around trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I know that after the attacks of September 11th, I wanted to join the military, and my grandmother, as much as she was a supporter of the military, didn't want me ultimately going over there and coming back in a body bag. I had my heart set on joining the Marine Corps, and after she passed away, I took a pretty hard look at my life, and I was doing absolutely nothing, and ultimately came to the decision to join the military. Tried to join the Air Force, actually, and they told me no. I got a few tattoos, not as many back then, but that was one of the reasons why they said no. And the Army recruiter, as they tend to be, was outside smoking a cigarette. And so he pulled me in and signed me up for. I was really naive to anything military. None of my family members are military. So he said, yeah, infantry is the best job. And then got me to sign an airborne contract as well. So I left for Fort Benning, Georgia, 2008 in October, and was an 11 X-ray contract. And then while I was in basic training, you either go one of two ways with your 11 X-ray contract. You go Bravo or Charlie, and I ended up being an 11 Charlie.
And what is 11 Charlie? Because I know 11 Bravo, but I don't know Charlie.
Yeah, so 11 Charlie is infantry mortarman.
Got it. Okay. All right. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with like the Marine Corps. So we have like I was a 0311 infantry
Yep.
rifleman, and then Jesse, the guy who I found a talk with, was a 0341. So the mortarman aspect there. So I wish they could just keep it all the same, like just across all branches. Like every other branch calls it MOS, and then I think Air Force is ASFC,
Something, you know, they got to be
ACF.
different, right?
Why y'all got to be different? I don't
Yeah.
know. Just keep it the same.
Yeah.
Um, so wait, all right. So you did 5 years. Did you do any deployments? What was the best part about being in the Army? All
Yeah.
that. Get into it.
So after I finished airborne school, I was really, really fortunate to come down on orders for Vicenza with the 173rd Airborne. And when I got there, they had just gotten back from, I think it was OEF 8, which was a really difficult deployment. I'm sure many of your audience will know the documentary Restrepo.
Mm,
Well, that was the unit that I walked into right when they came home.
got it.
So we had, like living legends like Sal Gunta walking around the base. And it was tough, as a fresh-faced cherry, coming into such a storied and well-respected unit who just had probably one of the toughest deployments of the global war on terror.
Mhm.
We got held to a pretty high standard, but that ultimately served us very well. So I was in Italy for maybe about 6, 7 months before we deployed. And we went back to the Kunar province. We were in Kunar for about half, maybe a little bit more than half of the 12-month deployment, and then we transferred over to Paktika province, still up in the northeast, kind of near the border of Pakistan, but ultimately did a 12-month deployment with them. Came back, came down on orders for Fort Lewis, Washington State. So that was a big culture shock going from a small airborne unit like the 173rd to a striker brigade. You know, being geographically up in Washington was awesome. I love the Pacific Northwest, but the unit itself, it was not as squared away as the 173rd. But regardless, I deployed with them. Thankfully, we did not deploy with the strikers. We had MRAPs and MATVs and all that good stuff. And then that time we deployed to Ghazni province, and then we kind of bounced around a little bit. So,
Got it.
and those were my two combat deployments.
Okay. All right. And then during that time, what was kind of the mentality shift and realization that like, hey, combat's real and like this is no joke.
Yeah. My first squad leader, guy named Arnone, tough dude, and he was actually from out here in California, from Vallejo. And I always kind of wondered in the beginning, like, why was he so tough on us? And he always seemed so pissed off and angry. Excuse me.
You're good.
But once we actually got down range and things started happening, I understood why. Um, you know, Hearing, we train like we fight was something that was just constantly drilled into us, and mistakes, they're inevitable, but they weren't accepted, and if they happened, they were corrected, and they were corrected in a pretty heavy-handed manner. But that's how I grew up. Like I said, kind of half-heartedly when we started this. I was a man child when I joined the military. I may have been 21 at age, but I was probably 15 at heart. I was kind of an idiot. I liked to party. Everybody told me when I joined the military, you're not going to do well. No, you don't like being told what to do. You don't like authority. And they weren't wrong, but I actually thrived in that environment. I learned pretty quickly just to shut up and do my job. And that served me well throughout my military career. Once we got downrange, it wasn't long before we took our first KIA. And it was one of the most well-respected soldiers in our unit. Top Gun and Sniper School, just one of the best of the best. And it made it very, very clear that if one of our best soldiers can die this quickly in combat, it's going to happen to any one of us. And so it was pretty sobering, and it was definitely a coming to Jesus moment for a lot of people, especially for the guys who had never deployed before. Luckily, throughout the rest of the deployment, we didn't take too many more casualties. It was a pretty kinetic deployment, but it was one that we handled really well, and that comes from the leadership down, and training and all the other aspects of running a squared away unit. So.
Mhm. Yeah, and so I say this all the time. Like I've never been overseas in a combat deployment. Nothing like that. We went to Japan and I ate and drank all the sake and sushi and partied it up for the
Yeah.
most part. Um, when you find out about the first KIA of the deployment, right? What's like the like how does it hit you as a unit, you know? And like obviously that's probably when it's like, oh shit, this is real. And like the mentality kind of shifts. So the next time like you leave friendly lines, you're probably a little bit more on alert. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's, I mean, not only are you a little more on alert, you're a little more pissed off. And like I said, the first KIA was somebody who was very well respected. He was one of our scout snipers. And so being in the headquarters company within the battalion, he knew the first sergeants, he knew sergeant majors, he knew, our lieutenant colonels and stuff like that. So it was a top down impact on losing that soldier. And definitely a mentality shift. Definitely, time to really button it up. And not that any mistakes were made. This was combat. This is what happens. And you can be on top of your game doing everything perfectly the way it's supposed to go, and still get taken out. But I think it really, like I said, it sobered everybody up really quickly. Like, we're actually in a combat zone. We're no longer, in Germany training or in the shoot house or wherever you may be. We're downrange. These 7.62 bullets are real. We're here to do work. So
And then, so throughout the 5 years as well, obviously, so we're big on veteran and first responder mental health. Can you talk about some of the things that you learned throughout that time in regards to veteran mental health, what it's like being in, what it's like getting out, the transition?
yeah. So when we got back my first deployment, my platoon sergeant at the time, he's actually still in. He's a sergeant major, very well respected. And he made everybody go see Doc. Even if we all did it. Like, no, I'm fine, I'm good. He said, I don't care. We're all gonna go. And I think that was the best thing he could have done for a lot of these younger guys like myself, because it opened up that door to being like, you know what, even if we went in and said, no, it's fine, it's combat, it is what it is, at least we knew where to go. If once the guys are all back in the barracks and things start hitting you, you can kind of trail off and do your own thing. And so I think that opened up the door to a lot of us, like, that this is real again, that what happened in Afghanistan doesn't just stay there. Like, we bring that back with us, right? And so that was kind of where the seed was planted as far as mental health and the impact of combat and trauma and things like that. And you see it too, like with some of the older like NCOs and stuff like that, like the anger or and things like that. You never really understood it, and then when you understand that they've lost 4 or 5 of their closest friends or soldiers that were under their command, you understand why. And I'm really proud to say, like, a lot of the guys that I served with, be it my peers or some of the senior guys that I served with that I still stay in touch with, so many of those guys have done their part in reducing the stigma of reaching out for help. I work in mental health and substance abuse now, and a lot of the guys that I serve with are sober now, and so it's just that mentality of like, no, we're infantry, we don't go to sick call, we don't go to doc. That was definitely a part of it. Like, unless you had a bone sticking out or you were, violently bleeding from places you don't want to be bleeding from, you didn't
Yeah.
go see doc,
Mhm.
and so, but that has definitely shifted over time. I've got some friends who are still in, and they say that it's a lot better now than it used to be. I think there's probably still a long way to go, but that whole like shut up and march on, I think is slowly starting to soften up a little bit, and people are understanding that serves nobody. Like, not only is it not good for us, but when we get home, it's not good for our families. It's not good for our communities, future
Yeah.
employers, like whatever you want, So I'm glad to see that is really starting to shift within our community quite a bit.
Yeah, no, and I will completely agree with you. And so I'm still in actually. I'm in the Coast Guard Reserves. And I feel like the Coast Guard might be similar to what your wife experienced in the Air Force, where it's pretty damn chill.
Yeah.
Uh, just in there to hit 20 years and then kind of get out. But they're pretty open to mental health and talking about it and everything too, which is kind of cool to see. And then same thing with like the first responder community. Like I'm an active police officer and seeing the more resources, seeing all this stuff, and like that's why we call it like the Overwatch Collective. Like it's a collective effort. There are so many other podcasts out there, other nonprofits that are doing such great work for our community to normalize the mental health, to reduce the numbers of suicide, even if it's by one. Um, so it's cool, man. I appreciate you explaining that. Have you had the unfortunate experience of losing somebody to suicide or somebody in the unit?
Yeah. So we had one guy, my first deployment, made an attempt on his life. Thankfully, he was unsuccessful. He was, sent home, transferred out of the unit. Stayed in touch with him for a while. There was some previous sexual trauma that had happened to him, and there was a situation where guys were horseplaying, and it triggered something in him.
Mm,
And so that was kind of like my first exposure to, suicide in the military ranks. But since leaving the military, I've lost quite a number of people that I served with, either to accidental overdose, intentional overdose, firearm suicide, and it's scary every time I hear from somebody who I haven't spoken to in a while. I don't do social media outside of LinkedIn for work reasons. So when somebody does reach me that I haven't spoken to in a while, it's usually intentional. And sometimes they don't always carry the best news. So it's definitely been something that I've seen. I do a lot of work with uh, local VSOs and different nonprofits and stuff like that. And we work with a lot of veterans with, trying to put a dent in the suicide statistics.
mm,
2015, I was almost a statistic myself. I got out of the military and I struggled, just trying to find my place again. I was bartending, partying a lot, and got, an alcoholic, drug addict, and just really kind of lost my place and, made an attempt on my life. God saw fit to keep me around. But so the veteran suicide epidemic is something that is near and dear to me, and something that I am really trying to wrap my brain around and see what we can do, whether it's me as an individual or, New Dawn Treatment Center or just a grassroots group of veterans. What can we do? Like you said, if it's one person that we can keep alive, then we made a difference, right?
yeah, I really appreciate you sharing about your attempt too and being open. Thank you for that. Um, it's always so impactful and means so much when people come on the podcast and they talk about that because somebody listening to the podcast right now, they hear that as well and they hear all these rates of suicide in the veteran and first responders community. It's like, holy shit, like you really never know who's
Right.
who's struggling, right? You don't
Yep.
really know what's going on deep down because they teach us to compartmentalize everything, right? And not look weak. And the Marine Corps is like the pain is weakness leaving the body, whatever, right? And like that's good for a combat mindset. But then like when you get out or when things slow down and you're struggling, like that's the last thing, that last motto you should probably be thinking, honestly.
Yep.
Um, did you see last week there was a veteran who died by suicide in the VA again?
Yeah, yeah. I unfortunately did see that, and I know that a while back there was kind of a series of those happening, and I mean, one is too many, but I really hope that that doesn't create a wave of more. But I mean, if the VA is not listening, they should be now. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. I know it's happened before quite a bit of times. I've heard all those stories and it's like a it's like a shock to hear that again. You're like, how many more of these do we need to have?
yeah.
Uh, if you had a magic 8 ball and you could fix suicide in the military community, what would you do?
Oh man. Um, God, that's a great question. I know for me, and I know, in my my career, my experiences working with other veterans, the one thing that I'm seeing a common trend of is veterans lacking a purpose, lacking a mission. And be that, you know, working with other veterans, a meaningful career, whatever, but they wake up every day and they don't have what they feel is a purpose, like when we, from the start of our military career to the end, like for most of us, we felt like we made a difference. We felt like we were proud individuals. We had, the flag on our shoulder and whatever camo pattern on, our bodies. And we were proud individuals. And then when you take off that uniform for the last time, whether it's because you medically can't do it anymore, you honorably served your time and you got out, you retired, or, maybe you made some bad choices and you got out, but when that uniform comes off for the last time, so many veterans are struggling to be like, to find out who they are without that. And so I guess, I mean, if it was as simple as that, just, poof, everybody gets a new mission, everybody gets a new purpose. And not to say that it's a one size fits all, but I've definitely found for, the hundreds of veterans that I've seen come through the treatment center, the ones that find a purpose pretty quickly on in their recovery are the ones who are finding success.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, no, I like it. And I know it's a very loaded question, but um, yeah, it's so tough, right? Because you go from, it's like, especially specifically if you're active duty, you're going from during the week training, waking up at 05, go PT, you're doing the thing. And then at night, you're hanging out with the guys. And then all of a sudden, snap of a finger, you're back home, civilian life, everything's changed.
Mm.
And definitely could be a very rough adjustment for people. Um, so I know you've mentioned New Dawn a few times, how you're able to help people with substance and everything. So let's get into New Dawn.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't even really know too much about it. I did a little bit of research before the podcast, but I think it's good to get out there for our community, our listeners, and everything. So I'll hand it off to you wherever you want to start, and then
All right.
I'll just poke and pry and ask some questions.
Cool. Yeah. So our biggest footprint is in the Sacramento area. And we're a family owned company. It's been in the same family for almost 40 years. And the current CEO is the son of the original founders and CEO. And, he took over the reins probably, I think 6 or 7 years ago before I got there. And he's really grown, grown what we're able to do in a pretty big way. We have gender specific houses. We found that, when people are in early recovery, keeping women with women and men with men is usually the best route. We do have one co-ed facility. It's our facility up in Reno. But there's levels of separation for that, that same purpose. We are primary substance abuse. We've got plans for primary mental health programs down the line. But we treat co-occurring disorders as well. So veterans obviously coming in with PTSD, high rates of anxiety, depression, borderline personality disorder, you name it. We'll help them out with it. And we have all levels of care. So by that I mean we do medical detox because if you're addicted to benzodiazepines or alcohol, and you just try to stop by yourself, you get a pretty good chance that you could die. And then other ones like opiates, like when you try to stop, you're going to feel like you want to die. So medical intervention is required for those kinds of detoxes to make sure they're safe and you don't die. And then we do residential treatment. And we have, our houses really are like they're residential houses. They're in residential neighborhoods. And we've got varying types of houses. Like one of our men's facilities in Sacramento, there's 4 houses on a kind of a cul-de-sac. We knock down all the fences in the back, so it's like a big community back there. 6 men per house, and so kind of little community. And they, it's rebuild that camaraderie. And that one is open to veterans, active duty, and civilians. And then we have a couple of our smaller programs. We consider them our luxury programs. It's like single occupancy rooms, really, really beautiful settings on acreage or, new modern construction and swimming pools and, all those things. And besides all the amenities, and I'm sorry, just to scale back a little bit, we also do the residential treatment, outpatient, and then some sober living as well, all in the Sacramento area. And then in Reno, we have detox, residential, and outpatient. In Lathrop, so in the Central Valley of California, we have a 10-bed facility, excuse me, a 6-bed facility with another one opening up right next door that offers detox and residential. And then we've got a new one coming in Redding, California, so up north. And then a project that I'm really, really excited about up in Alaska. It's still going to be under the New Dawn corporate umbrella, but it's going to be called Hope Valley Health and Wellness. And that's going to be in the valley outside of Anchorage in Wasilla. So not too far from Jaybur up there, the joint base.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know, but I guess Alaska has more veterans per capita than anywhere else in the country. And
News to me too.
right, but Alaska also has some of the highest rates of suicide and addiction. And so my CEO, he's not a veteran, but I mean, I come to him with anything veteran related, and he gets behind it. It's really, really cool to work for somebody like that. But he looks in these different areas, and he'll send myself or my direct out to do market research on areas where there's underserved veterans. And so we found that this area in Alaska was one of those places. So, so that's why we moved forward with the project out there. And then all of our facilities will have kind of a two-pronged attack to treating addiction. Addiction is usually the symptom of something else. For veterans, it could be military sexual trauma, it could be PTSD. So we have our certified drug and alcohol counselors that work on the addiction piece, but then we have master's level therapists at all of our facilities that work one-on-one with that veteran or active duty service member or civilian to treat what came before the addiction. Peeling back the layers of that onion and helping them process through that trauma bit by bit, slowly, because it takes time. And, we found it to be a really successful model. We do, we use evidence-based modalities. So brain spotting, acceptance commitment therapy, cognitive therapies. But then we also use holistic approach. So we'll do equine therapy. We've got an awesome ranch that we use out in the Sacramento area called Hart's Landing Ranch, and they're an EGALA certified, which is like specific to veterans kind of therapy for equines. We do, yoga. We do sound baths. We take the guys to the gym every single day. So it's kind of an all-encompassing whole body transformation that we try to bring.
Yeah, it sounds like you have everything in one. It sounds incredible.
We
Like I,
try.
I'm
We
I'm
try.
blown away.
Yeah.
And so, how do people pay for this?
Right. Yeah. Great question. So we are a community care partner with the VA. So if you are a veteran, you have the VA just doesn't have the infrastructure to treat every single veteran that comes to them. I think something like 14% or something like that veterans, maybe more, have a substance abuse problem, and there's not enough beds at local VAs to treat these kinds of things, and so they have to reach out to community partners such as New Dawn. And so we're one of the preferred providers in the area. And we take veterans from all over the state to all over the country, and they get a referral from the VA, and the VA covers 100% of the cost. And then if they're active duty, TRICARE covers it. And then if you're a civilian, we do, private insurance, private pay, things like that. Did I lose you?
This is the frustrating part
Greg, are you
about
still there?
doing podcasts. I hope
Oh,
you can
shit.
come back. Okay, take number two. So we lost internet connection really quick. So hopefully Riverside, please be able to merge them back together because I don't know technology that well. So before it interrupted, we were talking about how the VA cannot take care of everybody. So they go through the care program and they work with other people. So is that how y'all get the funding to be able to do that?
Yeah. So for as far as for our VA clients, they go to the VA, they get diagnosed with a substance abuse disorder. They work with the social workers over there, and they will determine what level of care they need, and if it's appropriate for them to send them to an outside facility through the community care network. Then the team at whatever the VA that we work with, they'll call me and just say, hey, I've got a candidate for a treatment. Do you have a bed? And then I do my part. And typically, what I'll do is I'll reach out to the veteran myself. I'm in recovery. I'm a veteran, so I know how these individuals are feeling. And sometimes it really helps to kind of know that there's another veteran there who knows what's going on. They know how I'm feeling, and they can kind of lower their walls a little bit. It can be kind of scary going into treatment. And so that has been a really good approach. It kind of puts veterans at ease a little bit. And the VA will, they send over the authorization, and we will bill TriWest, the billing company for the VA. For active duty, they can go to, their mental health clinics on base. And we work with TRICARE, and we get direct referrals from whatever active duty base, we're working with. And then for civilians, they go through their private insurance, or, we do private pay as well.
All right, very cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick your brain about working with the VA because it would be great for us to get uh or them to send veterans to us as well to get connected to our therapists across the country.
Absolutely.
Uh, yeah, and let's see. So what else? So what's your exact position and role there?
Yeah, so I'm the Veterans Program Manager, or the Western Regional Veterans Program Manager. It's kind of a mouthful. We added in the Western region because we have our facilities now, or soon to be, up in Alaska. And my friend Jesse up there will be the North Region Veterans Program Manager. But day to day, I'm working. I'm reaching out to different VAs to see if they've got any veterans that are appropriate for our treatment centers. I am going to all of our different treatment centers and doing case management with each of the veterans. When they come in, give them a little bit of time to get acclimated, especially if they're detoxing, they feel like shit, they're trying to figure out what's going on. So I'll let them get acclimated, let them, get some food in their stomach and wake up a little bit. And then I'll go reintroduce myself and find out what they need. Are they housed? Which some of them are, some of them are not. Are they employed? Are they? What's your service-connected disability at? I work with some really incredible local county VSOs. David West, specifically up in Nevada County. And anytime I have a veteran who, I'm a little bit biased, but anytime I have a veteran that I think deserves to have a higher service-connected disability, I give David a call. I'm like, hey man, I've got, this guy, this gal, they're tore up and they're at 20%. What can we do for them? And he'll get them on the phone and help them with all the paperwork and do all that. But then past this, like once they leave our facility, what are they going to do different? Like we talked about that purpose, that mission. What does that look like for the veteran? And for each one, it's different. Some of them are like, man, I want to work with other veterans. So it's like, all right, well, let's go talk to the VA and see if they have any volunteer opportunities. Let's go talk to the countless nonprofits that are out there that are helping veterans, or Gold Star families, or, let's figure something out. And for some of them, they want to go back to school. So I help them, with their GI Bill benefits or chapter voc rehab, and some of them they just want to get healthy, so we get them back in the gym, get them on a nutrition plan. We've got some amazing chefs at New Dawn that will help get them back to where they need to be. So I try to, the issues that veterans are facing and their needs to get back up on their feet are as unique as the veteran themselves. So I really lean into all of my community partners. Like, some of them are dog handlers, some of them are anglers or own companies or, employment agencies, whatever. And I lean on those and just say, hey man, I've got a veteran for you. I need this for him. And usually somebody has it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's so cool. And that's where the community aspect comes from, right? And like the more and more that we can expand our community and we'd be like, hey, that's not our specialty, that's not our niche, but let me get you connected to Greg, let me get you connected to Jesse, etc.
Yeah.
I think that's the win for us and how we can continue to help our community. Because like you mentioned before, the VA, and I trust me, we work with some VA people and some therapists, had them on the podcast. They care. They really do. They want to do the best that they can, but they're so tapped out and there are so many veterans, they are unable to take care of everybody to the best of their ability, which is a shame. Um, and that's why we're seeing service members or veterans go in and die by suicide. They're frustrated, but uh, that's the whole goal of us doing this podcast and our nonprofit. So let's see. Do you have any questions about our nonprofit and podcast and kind of what we do? I,
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you got connected to Cheryl and Donna. I'm sure they filled you in a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's also good sometimes on the podcast too, just to kind of give it a little breakdown. So,
Yeah. I'd
fire
love to hear
away.
more about it.
Yeah, so the podcast has started in 2021 by my buddy Jesse and I. So Jesse was in the Marine Corps, now he's in the Coast Guard. After losing friends to suicide. Um, so we just want to talk about like the lack of resources, the stigma, um, substance misuse, exactly like what you were talking about. Um, Divorces, the list goes on and on. And then so we had everybody in the military and first responder community on. We had service members, we had police officers, firefighters, dispatchers, deputy coroners, family members who've lost somebody to suicide in the military, service members who've attempted suicide coming on talking everything. And then it gained a lot of traction, turned it into a nonprofit with the intent to fund therapy for the community across the country. So fast forward to now, we contract and vet our own therapists to ensure that they're culturally competent. I know you said everybody there is master's level. Like it's very important to have therapists that understand, that have the training to work with our community because we're a little messed up. We can't just go to a Kaiser or Blue Shield therapist, right? Like,
Right.
um, so we cover 49 states. We have over 85 therapists contracted, and we came up with our smooth and confidential process to get our community in touch with these therapists to work on job-related trauma within a day or two, and then we fund 100% of the cost for the first 3 sessions, then drop into a tiered system after that. And then we also fund family members, spouses, and significant others who've lost a service member or first responder to suicide specifically. Um, and then we also fund 50% of the cost for some retreats. So, like the West Coast post trauma retreats in Northern California. So, we fund 50% of the cost for somebody to attend that. So, as of now, we're at like $13,000 spent on that, like in retreats, and then a total $312,000 spent on therapy and retreats. 285 people have gone through us to get connected to therapists and or the retreats, and then we've either fully covered or financially assisted 3,007 therapy sessions as of now. Um, so it's cool. And then the whole goal for us is to have 3 to 5 therapists in every single state, and then to do a podcast with every single one of them. So it gives that service member or first responder the ability to click on whatever state that they are in, see at least 3 to 5, and then instead of just like going to their website and their social media, you can come listen and watch a podcast with them. So then that'll give you kind of like, oh shit, like Greg's fucking weird. I want to work with Lee,
Right.
and I never would have known that if I didn't watch the podcast or
Yeah.
listen to it. So it really increases the chances for that first therapy session and that first time reaching out for therapy to be as much of a success as possible. Um, so that's kind of the goal. And this is all voluntary.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting paid as of now. And then I'm active LEO and then still Coast Guard Reserves too. And so it's a lot, but it's cool. It's
You guys are
rewarding.
busy.
Yeah, busy, nonstop,
Yeah.
man, nonstop. But
Well, I love that because I mean, so many times, like veterans or first responders, they have this trauma. They go to, I mean, let's just say the VA, for instance, right? I mean, how much turnover is there at the VA? And then every time you get a new doc or a new shrink, you have to tell that new doctor, what happened in your military career. And it's like every 6 months, I have to tell some new, med school graduate what happened to me. And it sucks. And so if you can kind of nail down like who your therapist is early on, without having to shop around and meet seven different people and tell the same story seven different times in the span of a few months. And
Yeah.
I really like that idea that you guys kind of, introduce them to your audience and then, hey, like this person's in this state, they could be your therapist, I like that model a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and it's cool, right? Obviously, with us both being service members and then me being the first responder, like we know the community very well. We know the process, we know the stigma, we know the VA, I know the employment assistance program, peer support, and we came up with this and we're like, this is exactly how we're going to do it. So you literally go to the website, there's a therapist tab, you click on whatever state you're in, and then you see a list of your therapists, and we make it super easy. And then we have a financial assistance tab. You fill out why you need financial assistance, your preferred therapist, and mention a little bit about job related trauma. You upload your DD 214 or your firefighter ID card, and then we either approve, deny, or we get more info from you. And then,
Nice.
like, I mean, we just connected somebody to a therapist yesterday in an hour and 25 minutes.
That's
Um,
super rad.
so, and I take it personally. Like, I love it when we see a financial assistance request come in, and I try to get on it as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
So there's no like automated email back to that first responder or service member. It's me,
Yeah.
like copy and pasting their email and be like, "Hey, Lee, thank you. We're tracking your request. Our board of directors is working on it currently. Get back to you shortly, brother." Like that means so much to people,
That's
I'm sure,
huge.
right? So,
Yeah, and I try to have the same approach because, like I said, like I get veterans, I get either the veteran themselves or the spouse. A lot of the time I get the spouse, or somebody from the VA calling me, and I put my personal cell phone numbers on my business cards. I give my business card out to everybody. My wife's used to it. Like, we sat down for dinner and my phone will ring and I don't recognize the number, and she's like, "Go, like you're good," because I know what it's like to sit there on hold with the VA for an hour and a half for that line to be cut dead. And, I'm dangerously close to being out of my medication. Or I've had people, and I don't mean to bash the VA at all, but I've had people call like the what is that? The emergency line, like the veteran crisis line, and be treated like complete crap, And so I never want one of my veterans to feel like, hey, you know what? Like I made the effort. I like really dug deep to say, hey, I need help. And Lee completely blew me off. Like I've been in their shoes and it's a lonely place to be. And so if I can be just a little bit of comfort for them, like, hey, dude, like it's cool. Like you're gonna be all right. It sucks right now. You feel like shit right now, but let's just hold tight a little bit and we're gonna get you what you need. If just that little bit of reassurance
mhm.
makes them say, you know what, like I'm not gonna go out tonight and drink, or I'm going to come into treatment today instead of next week, like then that can mean the difference between them being successful in recovery or them not being successful and either drinking themselves to death or, shit themselves in the face. And
Yeah.
that's the complete opposite of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and see, this is great. So like I'm so glad we had Cheryl and Donna set up a booth there because we got so many good connections from there.
Yeah.
Um, I just had a meeting today with Lacey Nelson and then Dr. DePaulban. They were both there as well.
Mhm.
So it's just so cool, right? And like the more people that we can connect to and the more resources, like I see that as a win in my
Yeah.
opinion. Um,
There was another group there. Well, there was a few. I spoke about Hart's Landing Ranch already, and Donna, she was over there. But I met with a woman named Janet, and she ran Theta Wellness Center. And it's this really unique approach to mental health and just whole body health. They work with a lot of firefighters, a lot of first responders, and they do like red light therapy. They do hyperbaric chambers, but and I'm probably butchering the crap out of it because it's way way smarter than I am. But just what they did was really really cool, and so hopefully your board members got their contact information. If not, I can send it to you. Because I think that what they're doing could really make a difference in the first responder community and the veteran community as well.
Sweet. Yeah, and I don't know if they did or not. It does not ring a bell. I know they were tapped out that 2 days.
Yeah, a
So
lot of
if
people.
you can send it to me, just in case, and then I can establish some comms, that would be great. Then schedule a
Yeah,
podcast with them and everything.
absolutely.
Yeah, man. So kind of getting towards the end, is there anything else that you want to mention? And I do have one last question that we wrap up our podcast with every single episode, but want to see if there's anything else that you got, or you could just go into where people can find you, New Dawn, learn some things, etc.
Yeah, and just for veterans out there or for family members that are watching, if you're a veteran struggling, like don't wait. There's substances out there right now that are taking people out at record numbers. And we hear those numbers of 22 a day bouncing around, but the more I kind of dive into that statistic, it looks like it's north of 40. And so if you've got a veteran that's struggling and you're worried about them, don't worry about them being upset with you. Make the phone call, whether it's to the VA or, a friend that they served with, or reach out to New Dawn Treatment Center, and the girls in the admissions office will put you in touch with me. And it's newdawntreatmentcenter.com. And I'm on the website. All of our admissions lines are on the phone, are on the website, and there are resources out there. We just gotta, sometimes you gotta press the VA because Greg, like you said, like they're tapped out, and not that they don't care, they absolutely do, most of them. But there's so many veterans that need help, and so if sometimes it's not, it's who that helps, and so sometimes there's a backdoor way in and things like that. So just keep trying.
Yeah, no, I think that's some good advice. Definitely good advice. Sweet. So the way that we wrap up every single podcast, our motto, it actually comes from an 11 Bravo dude. Grew up across the street from him. He was actually striker, did kind of some of the same stuff that you did. I was thinking about it while you were talking. Um, so season one, episode 6, literally we were brand new. We had no idea what we were doing with the podcast. He was talking about how he lost more friends to suicide upon return stateside than actually overseas.
Mhm.
And he was like, "Hey, what you guys are doing, starting everything is great. Even if you're just talking and it's just audio or it's terrible video, it doesn't matter. If it saves one person, then mission complete, right? Like if we can help one more person, that's one less suicide. So then from there, one more is one less stuck. So it's on our challenge coins, our sweatshirts, our polos. It's all over the place. So what we do at the end of every episode is we ask our guests what one more is one less means to them. So without further ado, would love to hear what one more is one less means to you.
Yeah, one more is one less is one more dad coming home every night to his kids. It's one more of my friends that I served with living a meaningful life. It's one more person to honor those who didn't come home. Veterans and law enforcement, like we're proud individuals, and we do have a purpose. And sometimes that gets a little bit lost behind the trauma, but it's in there. And we just gotta remember, like I always tell my veterans when they're struggling, like somewhere deep inside of you there is a warrior. You gotta dig deep and find that warrior to get through the shit that you're going through right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I like it. I like it. It's always cool because everybody's um meaning of what one more is one less means to them is always different. So
Yeah.
very cool. Well, Lee, I appreciate you taking the time, uh, coming on, sharing about your time in the Army, and then New Dawn Treatment Center. There are so many resources out there, and I thought like I know a good amount of resources specifically in California because that's where I'm from.
Mhm.
But clearly, there's still more out there. So,
Yeah.
um, looking forward to doing some more research. And now, obviously, you're another resource for us to refer people to. So
Absolutely.
it's great. I love it.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, it's been an honor. Thank you.
Of course, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the episode, season 9, episode 22. I'm sure Riverside will figure out the technical mishap that we had, and
Hopefully.
it'll be perfect, like nothing even happened. So I shouldn't even be saying this right now. And this wraps up 2025 for the Overwatch Collective podcast. Season 10, episode 1 will be recorded here in 20 minutes, but we'll drop early January to kick off 2026. So,
Cool.
Lee, Thank you. Happy holidays, happy New Year, and God bless America.
Take care, brother. Thank you.